Cape Town was warm that evening. The sun dipped low over the harbor, casting long golden reflections across the water. A soft breeze carried the scent of salt and diesel. As Bill Gates stepped out of the conference hall and loosened his collar, the day's keynote had run longer than expected, and the room had been full of questions, debates, applause. But now he wanted quiet, a short walk. He told his security detail. Alone, just 15 minutes to breathe. Without cameras or schedules. They hesitated but nodded. Gates was known for these escapes. He walked down a narrow side street behind the venue. There were no tourists here, just locals finishing work, shopkeepers pulling down shutters, teenagers laughing over music leaking from a Bluetooth speaker. Then he saw him. A man was digging through a green, plastic trash bin beside a cafe that had closed early. His clothes were torn, skin burned from sun and time. A tangled beard covered most of his face. But it wasn't the man's appearance that stopped Bill in his tracks. It was the way he moved, deliberate, efficient. He wasn't just scavenging, he was searching. And then the man turned slightly, light catching the side of his face, and something inside Bill's chest dropped. The cheekbones, the left side dimple, the tiny scar above the eyebrow. "Daniel?" He whispered aloud, as if the name had summoned a ghost. The man looked up. For a second, nothing. Just a blank stare. Then his eyes narrowed. "Bill?" Gates stood frozen. "My God, Daniel." The man slowly stepped back from the bin, blinking hard. "It's been 40 years?" Bill nodded. "Almost." They stared at each other like two puzzle pieces left in separate boxes for decades. Daniel rubbed his neck. "You're still dressed like a science fair judge. And you're still stealing other people's trash." Bill replied before quickly adding, "I didn't mean that." Daniel smirked. "Relax, it's accurate." A long pause. Bill took a breath. Can I take you somewhere to eat?" Daniel shrugged. "Only if it's not that place with kale wraps." "There's a diner 2 blocks from here." Daniel tilted his head. "You remember diners? I remember you ordering 3 milkshakes and making me pay for all of them." That made Daniel laugh. A rough, dry sound, but real. "Irito." They walked slowly. Bill noticed how Daniel's right leg dragged slightly. An old injury? He didn't ask yet. The diner was small, dimly lit, nearly empty. A single elderly waitress in a blue uniform looked up, startled by the sudden appearance of 2 very different men. They sat in a corner booth. Daniel slid into the seat with the ease of someone who hadn't sat indoors in a while. When the menus came, Bill barely looked. "Cheeseburger, fries, Coke?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Still boring. And you?" "Same, but make it 2 Cokes, haven't had one in a year." They ate in near silence for the first few minutes. Then Daniel leaned back, wiping his mouth with a paper napkin. "You're still the richest man in the world." "Not quite," Bill said, "but I'm doing okay." Daniel's eyes searched his. "Why are you here, really?" "Cape Town, I mean. Seems far from Seattle." "Education summit," Bill answered. "Digital inclusion, infrastructure, teacher support." "The usual." Daniel scoffed. "You give laptops. I sleep on cardboard. We both solve problems, I guess." But Daniel wasn't bitter. He just looked tired, not in a way sleep would fix. Bill hesitated, then said, "I thought you went to MIT." "I did for 2 semesters." "What happened?" Daniel stared at the window. "My mom got sick. I dropped out. Started coding for small companies. Built back-end systems. Got good. Too good. Made enemies. Lost contracts. Burned out. Then one bad investment. Then another. Then silence." Bill looked down. "I tried to find you," he said. "Years ago? After Harvard." Daniel's voice cracked. "I saw you on TV, TED Talks, your book. I figured you forgot me." "I never forgot you," Bill whispered. "You taught me basic, on that Tandy machine in your garage." Daniel smiled softly. "You broke the keyboard. You fixed it." They laughed quietly, carefully, like men rediscovering a language they used to speak fluently. Irito. After dinner, they walked out into the night air. Daniel looked unsure. "I should go." "Where?" Daniel motioned vaguely down the street. "There's a place behind the fish market. Dry most nights." Bill hesitated. "I can get you a room. Just for tonight." Daniel shook his head. "If I let you help, what happens tomorrow? A news story? A hashtag? I'm not a PR project." Bill's eyes hardened. You're not. You're my friend. Daniel searched his face. Why now? Bill took a long pause. Because I owe you more than I ever repaid, he said. And maybe I needed to see you like this. To remember who I used to be before they started calling me a genius. Daniel looked down. His voice barely a whisper. You were never the genius I was. Bill chuckled. That's true. They stood in silence. Then Daniel nodded slowly. All right. One night, but no press. No hotel with valet parking. Just a bed. I know a place, Bill said. As they walked together toward the waiting car, Bill glanced at the man beside him, the man who had once taught him how to code, how to think, how to question everything, and he realized he wasn't rescuing Daniel. He was finding himself. The motel Bill chose was old but clean. A faded blue neon sign blinked night in above the office door. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when Bill slid his credit card across the counter. One night, he said quietly. 2 beds, no questions. Daniel stood a step behind him, arms folded, eyes darting around like someone expecting to be turned away. When the key was handed over, he gave a small nod, almost involuntarily. The room was on the 2nd floor. Beige walls, a humming mini-fridge, a TV that looked like it hadn't been touched in a decade. Daniel tossed his backpack onto the bed closest to the window and collapsed into the mattress. Softest thing I've felt in months, he muttered. Bill sat in the chair by the small desk watching him. Daniel turned his head. So, what's this? A one-night redemption? A billionaire guilt tour? Bill didn't flinch. I don't know what this is yet. But it's not charity. It's a reunion. Daniel stared at the ceiling. People don't come back for me, Bill. They do now. Irito. After a long silence, Daniel sat up and pulled something from his backpack. A small, worn-out notebook wrapped in plastic. He held it out. You remember this? Bill took it. The cover was frayed, corners bent. He flipped it open. His own handwriting. Code for multi-screen input. He read aloud, stunned. This is our project from sophomore year. You wanted to make a touchscreen kiosk system for the library, Daniel said. You designed the interface. I wrote the back end. Bill ran his fingers down the faded lines of code. I haven't seen this in decades. I carried it everywhere, Daniel said, even when I had nothing else. Why? Because that was the last time I felt like my ideas mattered. Irito. They talked until 3 a.m. About their childhood, breaking into the school's computer lab after hours. About the summer Daniel built a radio antenna from scrap and they listened to Japanese broadcasts in the middle of the night. About the time they almost got suspended for hacking the teacher's gradebook until they turned it into a project on data integrity and got an A. Bill laughed harder than he had in months. You were brilliant, he said. You still are. Daniel shook his head. That brilliance doesn't count when you're invisible. Bill leaned forward. It does to me. They talked until 3 a.m. about their childhood, breaking into the school's computer lab after hours. About the summer Daniel built a radio antenna from scrap and they listened to Japanese broadcasts in the middle of the night. About the time they almost got suspended for hacking the teacher's gradebook until they turned it into a project on data integrity and got an A. Bill laughed harder than he had in months. You were brilliant, he said. You still are. Daniel shook his head. That brilliance doesn't count when you're invisible. Bill leaned forward. It does to me. Irito. The next morning, Daniel was already up and dressed, sitting on the edge of his bed staring at the floor. The sunlight revealed just how weathered he was, lines carved into his face, hands calloused and trembling slightly. I need to go, he said. Go where? Back. Bill stood. Let me help you. Daniel raised his hand. I told you I'm not your cause. You're not. You're my beginning, Bill said. Without you, there is no Microsoft. No Gates Foundation. No anything. You gave me my first real idea of what technology could do. I'm not offering you pity. I'm offering you a seat at the table you helped build. Daniel looked away. I've lived off the grid for too long. I'm not the same guy. I don't want the old guy, Bill said. I want the one who survived everything and is still standing. Irito. That afternoon, Bill made some calls. He arranged a health checkup. Clean clothes. A quiet apartment near the city center with a 6-month lease paid in full. When Daniel objected, Bill raised a hand. Just take the time. Figure out what you want next. Daniel hesitated, then nodded once. Irito. 2 weeks later, Daniel emailed Bill. Subject: remembering who I was. Bill. I plugged in the old code from our notebook. It still runs. I forgot what it felt like to make something. To solve a problem instead of being one. Thank you for giving me a night. It changed more than I thought it would. Irde. Bill replied. Subject: you're not done yet. Daniel. You haven't changed. The world just stopped looking. But I didn't. Irito. 3 weeks later, Daniel showed up at a local community tech hub. Not as a client, but as a volunteer. He cleaned old CPUs, rewired broken monitors, quietly taught a shy 15-year-old how to build a Raspberry Pi security camera from scratch. When one of the students asked him where he learned all this, Daniel smiled and said, from a kid who never stopped believing in me. A month passed. Daniel was still in the same small apartment near the edge of Cape Town. But now it looked lived in. There was a second-hand desk covered in tools, a soldering station, and a whiteboard he'd found in a recycling bin, now filled with scribbled flowcharts and reminders in red marker. Input error, try 12V bypass. Talk to Nico about audio latency. Never give up. Never vanish. Bill visited quietly every Saturday. No entourage, no interviews. Just coffee and conversation. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, just sat on the balcony, overlooking the narrow street below, watching life drift past like a slow-moving tide. Daniel had stopped pushing him away, but he hadn't let go of the past either. Irito. One Saturday morning, Bill brought a visitor. This is Dion, he said. He runs a tech accelerator in Nairobi. He's looking for people who know how to solve hard problems with minimal resources. Daniel looked skeptical. Like what? Dion grinned. Like designing data sync systems without stable electricity, or bootstrapping server farms from scrap. Stuff you've probably done just to stay warm. Daniel gave a dry chuckle. Dion continued, you don't need to apply. Just come hang out, talk, build something. See what sparks. Daniel didn't answer right away, but later that week he showed up and stayed. Irito. Soon his ideas were flowing again. He began helping teenage inventors design battery, monitoring systems from car parts. He sketched a solar-based router system for rural networks. He even drafted plans for a mobile coding lab that could fit in the back of a pickup truck. Word got around, not about his name, but about the quiet guy with the gray beard and genius eyes. He liked that. Irito. One evening, back at the apartment, Daniel sat across from Bill. There was an open laptop between them, and on the screen was a window titled Project Genesis version 001. Daniel tapped the trackpad. It's not much. Just a framework. For what? Bill asked. For dignity, Daniel said. For kids in places like we came from. Kids with no money. No access, just fire in their chest. He leaned back. I want to build an open-source education OS. Something that runs on junk hardware. Teaches coding in offline mode and has built-in mentoring tools. Peer-to-peer learning. Like we had. Bill's face lit up. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You in? I never left, Bill said. Irito. They began coding together every weekend. Two old friends, rebuilding something that had nearly been lost. They called it Project Genesis because it wasn't about resurrection. It was about return, to the first moment of hope, to the first spark, to the first keyboard, to the garage, to the belief that building mattered more than applause. But then one evening, Daniel grew quiet, too quiet. Bill noticed. You okay? Daniel hesitated. I had a checkup last week. Some blood work came back. They're not sure yet, but... Bill's face fell. How bad? I'll know in 2 weeks. Silence. Then Daniel added, if it is what they think, I don't want the last line of my story to be a trash bin behind a Cape Town cafe. Bill swallowed hard. It won't be, he said. And he meant it. The test results came in on a Tuesday. Daniel didn't call. He didn't text. He didn't answer emails. Bill flew back to Cape Town the next day. When he reached the apartment, the door was unlocked. Inside, everything was in place. Whiteboard scribbles still fresh. Soldering tools still warm. A mug of cold coffee on the desk. Daniel was on the balcony staring out at the ocean. He didn't turn around when Bill stepped outside. "It's cancer," he said quietly. "Late stage." Bill closed his eyes. "I'm so sorry." "I'm not," Daniel replied. "At least I know. At least I can choose what to do with the time left." He turned then, face calm. "I'm not afraid of dying, Bill. I'm afraid of disappearing." "You won't," Bill said firmly. "Not if I have anything to do with it." Irito. The next few weeks moved quickly. Daniel, ever the builder, became obsessed with finishing Project Genesis. He worked 12-hour days, sleeping in short bursts, sketching UX flows on napkins, recording tutorial voiceovers in the closet for clean audio. One day, Bill found him asleep at the desk, a line of code still blinking on the screen. While hope, CUIs, and keep trying, Bill sat beside him in silence for a long time. Irito. Together, they opened the project to the public. A GitHub repo, a tiny homepage, one line of text. Built by those the world forgot, for those the world hasn't noticed yet. The coding community noticed. First, a teacher in Senegal sent an email. "My students now believe they can build." Then a non-profit in Mumbai translated the lessons into Hindi. A week later, the whole platform had been cloned, mirrored, and translated into 14 languages by volunteers around the world. Daniel never posted on social media. He never gave interviews, but quietly on an anonymous dev forum he left a comment. "You don't need to be seen to spark change. You just need one person to believe you're not broken." A few days later, Daniel collapsed in his apartment. He was rushed to the hospital. Bill was there within an hour. Daniel, half-conscious, whispered as they adjusted his IV. "Is the Genesis repo still up?" "It's alive," Bill said. "So are the kids using it." Daniel closed his eyes and smiled. "That's enough." Irito. He passed away 2 days later. No fanfare, no headlines. Just a quiet email to Bill from the hospice nurse. He was peaceful. He kept his notebook by the bed. Irito. At the funeral, there were only 4 people. Bill, the Tech Hub director, a young volunteer named Akila, and a boy named Sizwe, who had learned to code using Daniel's platform and had come carrying a tablet he built from spare parts. They buried him beneath a tree overlooking the sea. Instead of a tombstone, Bill planted a small steel plaque into the soil. It had only 4 words engraved in clean, simple text. "You taught me how." Months passed. Cape Town rolled into winter, and the air grew sharp along the ocean. The Tech Hub still buzzed with life, kids typing away, building broken things into brilliant things. But something had changed in the rhythm of the place. Daniel's desk remained untouched. His whiteboard, still cluttered with half-erased code, now stood behind glass. People left sticky notes on it. Messages like, "You made me believe I could." "Thank you, D. Because of you, I didn't quit." Bill visited often, quietly, no cameras, no titles. He just sat with the students, listened, occasionally offered advice, but mostly he watched. Irito. One day a girl named Lindiwe approached him. She was 13, wore a hoodie 2 sizes too big, and had solder burns on her sleeves. "Are you the one who used to work with Mr. D?" she asked bluntly. "I was his friend," Bill replied. She nodded. "He said you were stubborn." Bill chuckled. He wasn't wrong. "I finished his mobile lab design," she said. "The one he sketched for rural schools. I coded the UI, want to see?" Bill knelt beside her laptop. The interface was clunky, but it worked. It was all Daniel, simple, durable, made for kids who didn't have a lot but had just enough. "You're incredible," Bill said. "No," she said, eyes shining. "He was." Irito. Later that evening, Bill stood alone by the tree on Signal Hill where Daniel was buried. He carried a flash drive in his pocket. On it was the final build of Project Genesis, now version 2.1, stable, translated into 30 languages, used by over 40,000 students. He knelt by the plaque and placed the drive beneath a smooth stone. "You're not gone," he whispered. "You're everywhere now." Irito. Back in Seattle, at the Gates Foundation, a meeting was interrupted by a message from Bill. Divert $2 million from tech innovation. Grants to direct mentorship programs in underserved areas. Call it the D Initiative, no branding, no press. The reply came in seconds. Approved quietly. Irito. 2 years later, a boy in rural Laos built the hand-powered tablet charger using Daniel's schematics. Girl in Argentina hacked Project Genesis to run audio lessons for blind coders. A robotics team in Baltimore used Daniel's offline compiler to win a national prize. None of them knew his full name, but they all knew his username. I'm ghosting the code. Irito. One afternoon, during an education panel, Bill Gates was asked, "What's the greatest innovation you've ever seen?" He paused and said, "A man who built something so powerful, it didn't need his name on it." Irito. And that was Daniel's legacy. Not fame, not fortune, but spark. Passed on. Multiplied. From a trash bin in Cape Town to the hearts of a generation he never got to meet.